The morning frost painted delicate patterns on the windows of our Beacon Hill brownstone as I stared at the golden skyline of Boston's financial district. My laptop screen glowed with complex financial algorithms, the kind I wasn't supposed to understand any more at 48. The kind my husband Tom insisted were best left to professionals, like his friend Victor Blackwood, the current pension fund manager who'd spent the last 3 years slowly dismantling my confidence in board rooms and charity galas. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's dive back into this story of resilience and redemption. My fingers traced the edge of an unmarked file containing 6 months of research into Victor's revolutionary investment strategies. Strategies that, according to my analysis, had exposed the pension fund to risks that would make any seasoned financial analyst lose sleep. But I wasn't supposed to be analyzing anything more complex than seating arrangements for charity luncheons anymore. Not since Tom had started listening to Victor's suggestions about women of a certain age finding fulfillment in philanthropy. The antique grandfather clock struck 9, its deep resonance echoing through our carefully decorated home. I could hear Tom in his study, probably on another conference call with Victor, discussing the unprecedented returns they'd generated for the pension fund. Returns that my algorithm suggested were built on a foundation of sand. The same pension fund that held not just Tom's retirement, but the futures of thousands of families like ours. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah Chen, my former colleague from Morgan Stanley, and now my secret ally in what was about to become the biggest challenge of my life. Board meeting just ended. Victor's proposal passed. Full discretionary. Control over investment strategies. You were right about everything. A second message followed. Marcus is ready when you are. Marcus Rivera, the brilliant young fintech pioneer who'd been mentoring me in secret, had shown me how traditional pension fund management was about to be disrupted by artificial intelligence and blockchain technology. The same technologies I'd been studying in the Financial Technology Innovation Program. Another secret I kept from Tom, tucked away with the acceptance letter in my desk drawer. Becky, honey, Tom's voice carried from his office. That familiar, patronizing tone that had crept in over the past few years. The Blackwoods are coming for dinner tonight. Victor's bringing the quarterly reports. Isn't it wonderful? We can discuss the couple's cruise he recommended while we celebrate the fund's performance. I closed my laptop as Tom appeared in the doorway, his silk tie perfectly knotted, silver hair expertly styled. He'd aged well, everyone said so, while subtly implying I should do something about my own visible years. 28% returns, he beamed, waving a glossy report. This is why I keep telling you to leave the financial stuff to people who understand today's markets. The irony might have made me laugh if it hadn't hurt so much. While Tom had been playing golf with Victor, I'd been developing a revolutionary risk assessment model with Marcus. A model that could expose the dangerous levels of leverage hidden in Victor's miracle returns. The same model I plan to present to the pension fund's board in exactly 30 days. My phone lit up again, Sarah sending the final confirmation I'd been waiting for. Board position opens next month. Selection committee meeting scheduled. Time to show them what past your prime looks like. I allowed myself a small smile, remembering the day 3 months ago when Victor had used those exact words to dismiss my concerns about the fund's risk exposure at the annual shareholders meeting. The Blackwoods arrived at 7, Victor's signature cologne announcing his presence before the doorbell chimed. Patricia, his wife, air-kissed my cheeks while pressing an invitation into my hands. The Spring Charity Gala Committee simply must have you, Rebecca, now that you're available. The way she emphasized the last word made it sound like a chronic condition. Over dinner, I watched Victor hold court, gesturing with his wine glass as he explained his latest investment strategies to Tom. Strategies I knew were dangerously over-leveraged, built on complex derivatives that could implode with a single market shift. But whenever I tried to ask a question, Victor would smoothly interrupt with comments about how complex modern finance had become since my day. Speaking of complexity, Victor turned his attention to me, swirling his Bordeaux. Tom mentioned you've been spending a lot of time on the computer lately. Not getting into any trouble, are you? His laugh suggested it was a joke, but his eyes held a warning. You know how these technical things can be at our age. I thought about the advanced financial modeling software hiding behind my desktop's knitting pattern bookmark, about the artificial intelligence algorithms I'd been developing with Marcus, about the presentation sitting in my encrypted drive that could unravel Victor's carefully constructed house of cards. Just keeping up with the charity committee emails, I smiled, taking a sip of water to hide my expression. Later that night, after the Blackwoods had left and Tom had retired to his study with a nightcap, I stood in my home office looking out at the city lights. My reflection in the window showed someone Victor and Tom had underestimated. Someone who'd spent the last year preparing for a moment they never saw coming. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Marcus. Set up the meeting. It's time to show them what the future of pension fund management really looks like. The future. I didn't add, that would begin with a presentation to the board's selection committee in 30 days. A presentation that would either save thousands of retirements or end my marriage. Possibly both. The city lights twinkled back at me, the same lights I used to see from my office at Morgan Stanley. They hadn't changed, but I had. And soon, very soon, everyone would understand exactly what a woman past her prime was capable of doing to protect what mattered. The mahogany-paneled boardroom of the Boston Financial Center hummed with tension as I adjusted my blazer, keeping my expression neutral, while Victor Blackwood presented his latest innovation to the pension fund's investment strategy. Sarah Chen, my longtime ally, sat across the massive table, her subtle head tilt telling me she'd caught the same red flags in his proposal that I had. The morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows cast long shadows across spreadsheets that promised impossible returns. As you can see, Victor gestured at the projection screen, his signet ring catching the light. Our new derivative-based strategy has yielded unprecedented results. We're looking at a 40% increase in projected returns. He paused, shooting a pointed look my way. Though I'm sure some of our more traditionally minded observers might find these modern techniques overwhelming. I maintained my composure, remembering the encrypted files on my laptop that told a very different story about those unprecedented results. 3 months of late-night analysis with Marcus had revealed the dangerous leverage hiding behind Victor's glossy presentations. But today wasn't the time to show my hand. Not yet. Furthermore, Victor continued, straightening his monogrammed cuffs, I'm proposing a restructuring of the fund's oversight committee, streamlining decision-making processes by centralizing control under experienced leadership. Translation: removing the last remaining checks on his authority over billions in pension funds. The board members nodded appreciatively, most of them from the same exclusive clubs where Victor spent his weekends with my husband. I watched Dorothy Hamilton, the only other woman on the board besides Sarah, furrow her brow at the risk exposure charts. She'd been in finance longer than anyone else in the room, but Victor had already started his campaign to ease her into emeritus status. My phone vibrated silently. A message from Marcus. Algorithm caught something in their derivatives. Position. Meet at the usual place? I slipped the phone back into my pocket just as Tom entered the boardroom. He wasn't supposed to be here today, but Victor had probably arranged it, knowing my husband's presence would make me less likely to speak up. Tom, perfect timing, Victor beamed. We were just discussing the exciting changes ahead. Your lovely wife has been kind enough to join us today, though these technical details must be quite daunting. The condescension in his voice made several board members shift uncomfortably. Actually, I spoke for the first time, keeping my voice level, I have some questions about the risk metrics on page 47. I pulled up the relevant section on my tablet, watching Victor's smile tighten imperceptibly. The correlation assumptions in your stress tests seem optimistic given current market conditions. Becky, Tom interjected, using the diminutive I'd grown to hate. I'm sure Victor has thoroughly vetted all the technical aspects. Why don't we focus on the upcoming pension fund gala? Patricia mentioned you hadn't responded to the committee invitation yet. The boardroom temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Sarah's pen scratched across her notepad, her way of managing anger in professional settings. Dorothy Hamilton's eyes narrowed, her decades of experience probably setting off the same. Alarm bells that had driven me to spend months building my case against Victor's house of cards. Of course, I smiled, closing my tablet. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Of course, I smiled, closing my tablet. Though I hoped we might also discuss the emerging role of artificial intelligence in risk management. I've been doing some fascinating research. Speaking of research, Victor cut in smoothly. I've prepared a special presentation on our 5-year projections. Tom, why don't you join us at the head of the table? Your input would be invaluable. The message was clear. This was their world, not mine. As the lights dimmed for Victor's presentation, I caught Sarah's eye. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, our signal that she'd recorded every dismissive interaction, every interrupted question. Evidence we'd need when the time came to challenge the old guard's chokehold on billions in retirement funds. The next 2 hours were an exercise in controlled fury as Victor outlined his vision for the fund's future. Every chart, every projection was built on assumptions that my algorithms had already proven dangerous. But he knew his audience, men, of a certain age and status who saw cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence as threats to their established order. In conclusion, Victor gestured expansively, we're entering an unprecedented era of opportunity. Though we must be cautious about embracing untested technologies or alternative perspectives that might destabilize our proven methods. My laptop held data that showed his proven methods had exposed the pension fund to more risk in the past year than in its entire previous history combined. The same laptop where Marcus and I had built a revolutionary risk assessment system that could protect thousands of families' futures. But today's meeting had confirmed what I'd suspected. They would never accept change from someone they saw as just another board member's wife. As the meeting adjourned, Dorothy Hamilton lingered by my chair. That was an interesting question. About the risk metrics, she said quietly. I've been reviewing similar concerns myself. Perhaps we could discuss them over coffee sometime. Before I could respond, Patricia Blackwood swept into the boardroom. Rebecca, darling, I thought I might find you here. We simply must discuss the gala seating arrangements. And I have the most wonderful idea for your speech. Something inspiring about transitioning to a more appropriate role at our age. I gathered my belongings, feeling Tom's expectant gaze. He wanted me to accept gracefully, to play the part Victor had chosen for me. Instead, I turned to Dorothy. Coffee would be wonderful. I have some analysis I'd love to get your opinion on. The flash of approval in Dorothy's eyes confirmed what I'd hoped. I wasn't the only one who'd seen through Victor's charade. As I left the boardroom, Sarah fell into step beside me. That went well, she murmured. Victor was so busy patronizing you, he didn't notice Dorothy's reaction to the risk numbers, or that 3 other board members looked troubled by his dismissal of AI integration. In the elevator, Tom caught up with us. Becky, what was that about? You know Victor has everyone's best interests at heart. All this questioning just makes you seem difficult. The way he said it, like I was a child being scolded, made something shift inside me. Actually, I replied as the elevator doors opened, I need to run. I have a meeting about those untested technologies Victor's so worried about. Tom's confused expression almost made me laugh. He hadn't even noticed that his brilliant wife, the one who'd matched him trade for trade at Morgan Stanley, had been learning Python and machine learning for the past year. "But the gala committee," he started. "We'll have to wait," I finished, already heading for the lobby. Some of us still care about more than seating arrangements. Sarah's quiet chuckle followed me out. She knew where I was going, to meet Marcus at our usual cafe, where an AI system we'd spent months developing was about to show us exactly how deep Victor's deception went. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "You're not going to believe what the algorithm found. Hope you're ready to blow up some careers." I stepped out into the Boston sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in months. Let Victor and Tom dismiss. Me is past my prime. Let Patricia patronize me with her charity committees. In exactly 28 days, when the board's selection committee met to review applications for the new Director of Innovation position, they'd learn what happens when you underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. The coffee shop where Marcus waited was deliberately chosen, as far from the financial district's power lunch spots as possible. A place where Victor's network of golf buddies and club members would never venture. Perfect for planning a revolution in pension fund management. Marcus had already claimed our usual corner table, his laptop surrounded by empty espresso cups. At 32, with a PhD in financial mathematics and a genius for coding, he'd been the perfect ally in my quest to expose Victor's dangerous games. He looked up as I approached, his expression confirming my suspicions about Victor's presentation. "The derivatives exposure is worse than we thought," he said without preamble. "Their stress tests aren't just optimistic, they're fictional. I ran the real numbers through our system. If the market shifts even 10% in the wrong direction, the whole thing collapses," I finished, pulling out my own laptop. "Show me." For the next hour, we dissected Victor's house of cards, our AI system revealing layers of risk that his glossy reports had carefully hidden. Each discovery made my decision clearer. I couldn't wait for the old guard to accept change. Gradually, not when thousands of pensions hung in the balance. My phone lit up with messages I ignored. Tom asking about dinner plans, Patricia following up about the gala committee, Victor smoothly suggesting I might be more comfortable focusing on the social aspects of fund management. They still thought I was just another board member's wife, more interested in charity luncheons than correlation coefficients. They had no idea I was about to become their worst nightmare. "The application for the Innovation Director position is ready," Marcus said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need to prove the current system is dangerously outdated, plus our AI model showing how to fix it." I stared at the tiny drive that held the power to either save thousands of retirements or destroy my marriage. Possibly both. "Send it in," I decided. It's time they remembered who they're really dealing with. As I stepped back into the afternoon sun, my phone buzzed one last time, a message from Dorothy Hamilton. "Reviewed the risk metrics more carefully. We need to talk. Tomorrow, my office, 8 a.m. Bring your research." I smiled, remembering Victor's condescending tone in the boardroom. He thought he'd secured his position by pushing women like me aside. He was about to learn that some of us push back. Dorothy Hamilton's private office overlooked the harbor, the morning fog wrapping Boston's skyline in ethereal gray. At 72, she'd survived 3 market crashes, 2 financial revolutions, and countless attempts to edge her toward retirement. The steel in her eyes as she reviewed my risk analysis reminded me why they'd never succeeded. "These algorithms," she tapped, my laptop screen with a perfectly manicured nail, "they're checking correlations Victor's models completely ignore, and the blockchain integration for transparency." She looked up sharply. "You developed this yourself?" I shared a glance with Marcus, who sat quietly in the corner, his usual energy contained in deference to the gravity of the moment. Marcus handled the technical implementation. The financial architecture is mine. 20 years of market experience distilled into code that could expose every flaw in Victor's strategy. Dorothy's lips curved into a smile that had probably terrified junior analysts for decades. Remember when they tried to move me to emeritus status last year? Said technology had evolved beyond my comprehension? She turned my laptop to face me. Show me everything. For the next 2 hours, we walked her through our system. The artificial intelligence that could predict risk correlations Victor's outdated models missed. The blockchain framework that would make every investment decision transparent to pensioners. The algorithm that had already identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in the current portfolio. Victor's been moving more assets into complex derivatives, I explained, pulling up our latest analysis. The reported returns look impressive, but if interest rates shift even 0.5%, everything collapses, Dorothy finished, her expression grim. And the board's too dazzled by short-term gains to see it. She stood, pacing before the window. The innovation director position opens next week. The selection committee meets in 25 days. I'm submitting my application today, I said quietly, along with proof that the current management strategy is dangerously flawed. Dorothy turned, studying me with eyes that had watched markets rise and fall for half a century. Victor won't take this lying down. He's got half the board in his pocket and your husband's reputation as a shield. You'll be risking everything. Your marriage, your social standing, all of it. I know. The weight of the encrypted drive in my pocket felt heavier. But there are 30,000 families depending on this pension fund. Real people who will lose everything if Victor's house of cards collapses. A long moment passed as Dorothy considered, the harbor fog starting to lift outside her windows. Finally, she nodded. Sarah Chen still heads the audit committee. Get her your analysis by tonight. I'll make sure she has reason to launch a full review of Victor's risk models. My phone buzzed. Tom, probably wondering why I'd missed the breakfast meeting with Victor's latest prospective client. I silenced it without looking. Thank you, Dorothy. Don't thank me yet. She settled back behind her desk. Victor's not just protecting his position, he's protecting a system. The same system that's been pushing women like us aside for decades. Making history is never comfortable, Rebecca. Marcus cleared his throat softly. The application package is ready to submit. Once it's in the system, there's no going back. I thought of Tom, still believing I spent my days planning charity events and attending yoga classes. Of Victor, so confident in his dismissal of outdated perspectives like mine. Of Patricia, with her endless committee meetings designed to keep women like me busy with table arrangements instead of financial statements. Submit it, I decided. All of it. Dorothy's smile was razor sharp. I'll see you at tonight's fundraiser. Should be interesting, watching Victor celebrate his success while the audit committee begins its review. The fundraiser, I'd almost forgotten. The annual pension fund gala where Victor traditionally announced his latest triumphs. Where Tom expected me to play the supportive wife while Victor detailed investment strategies I understood better than he ever would. Leaving Dorothy's office, Marcus and I took separate elevators, a precaution we'd learned over months of secret collaboration. In the lobby, I nearly collided with Patricia Blackwood, her tennis whites suggesting she'd just come from the country club. Rebecca, what a surprise to see you here. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I thought you'd be at the breakfast meeting. Victor was so looking forward to introducing you to the Hansons. They're new to Boston, just lovely people. She's heading the winter charity auction. Had a prior commitment, I replied smoothly. Investment research waits for no one. Patricia's smile flickered. Oh, still dabbling in finance? How persistent of you. Though you really must be careful with all this computer time. The glare does nothing for our skin at our age. I thought of the algorithms running on my laptop, already dismantling Victor's carefully constructed facade. Some things are worth a few wrinkles, Patricia. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Victor mentioned you seemed distracted at the last board meeting. Tom's worried about you, you know. All this focus on business when you should be enjoying life. The Hansons have a lovely villa in Tuscany, perfect for extended vacations. The message was clear. Stay. In your lane, play your role, take the graceful exit they'd planned. I shouldered my laptop bag, feeling the weight of the future it contained. Give Victor my regards. I'll see you tonight at the fundraiser. Back in my home office, I found Sarah waiting. She'd let herself in with the spare key I'd given her months ago, when we'd started preparing for this moment. Dorothy called, she said without preamble. The audit committee meets in an hour. Tell me you have everything ready. I connected my laptop to the secure server we'd set up, hidden behind enough encryption to make government agencies jealous. Every trade, every derivative position, every flawed risk assumption. Marcus's algorithms have been tracking them for months. Sarah settled into the chair across from me, her expression serious. Victor called an emergency meeting with his closest board allies right after you left Dorothy's office. He's planning something. Of course he is. I pulled up our latest analysis. But he still thinks I'm just Tom's wife playing with computers. He has no idea what's really coming. For the next hour, we refined our presentation for the audit committee. Every chart, every projection had to be perfect. Victor would seize on any flaw, use it to discredit everything we'd discovered. My phone kept buzzing. Tom, then Victor, finally Patricia. I let them all go to voicemail. They'd find out soon enough why I'd missed their precious breakfast meeting. Sarah looked up from her notes. You know what this means for your marriage. Tom's built his whole career on Victor's mentorship. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my desk, across the life I'd built and was about to risk. Tom stopped seeing me as an equal years ago. Maybe it's time he remembered who he really married. A key turned in the front door. Tom, home early, probably at Victor's suggestion, concerned about his wife's strange behavior. Sarah slipped out the back as I heard his footsteps in the hallway. Becky? His voice carried up the stairs. Victor said you missed the Hansons. They were asking about the charity auction. I closed my laptop, straightening my shoulders. In a few hours, at the fundraiser, everything would change. Victor would stand at the podium, proud and confident, unaware that Dorothy's audit committee was already unraveling his carefully constructed world. Coming, I called down, checking that my presentation was safely uploaded to our secure server. Let Victor plot with his board allies. Let Tom worry about charity auctions and villa vacations. They were about to learn that some women refuse to fade quietly into retirement. Some of us fight back. The afternoon passed in a blur of final preparations. Sarah coordinated with Dorothy, ensuring the audit committee had everything they needed. Marcus ran our algorithms one last time, confirming what we already knew. Victor's strategy had exposed the pension fund to catastrophic risk. At 6, I stood in our bedroom, zipping up the dress I'd chosen carefully for tonight's fundraiser. Classic black, elegantly cut, a power color for what was coming. Tom appeared in the doorway, handsome in his tuxedo, still blissfully unaware that his world was about to shift. You look beautiful, he said softly. Victor mentioned you seemed stressed lately. If this charity work is too much. I met his eyes in the mirror, wondering when he'd stopped seeing me as the woman who'd once matched him trade for trade on the trading floor. We should go. Wouldn't want to miss Victor's big announcement. The hotel ballroom glittered with Boston's financial elite. Victor held court near the podium, Patricia at his side, both of them radiating the confidence of people who believed they controlled the future. Dorothy caught my eye from across the room, her slight nod confirming everything was in place. Tom, Rebecca. Victor's voice boomed as we approached. Just in time, I was telling the Hansons about our amazing returns, though perhaps we should spare Rebecca the technical details. I smiled, thinking of the audit committee's findings already spreading through secure channels. Oh no, please continue. I'd love to hear more about those derivative positions. Something flickered in Victor's eyes, the first hint of uncertainty. Before he could respond, Dorothy's voice cut through the crowd. "Victor, dear, the audit committee needs a word. Immediately." As Victor excused himself, Sarah materialized at my elbow. "It's happening," she whispered. "They found everything." Tom touched my arm, frowning. "Becky, what's going on?" Victor seemed... "Watch," I said quietly as Dorothy's audit team surrounded Victor near the service entrance. "Everything's about to change." The next few minutes unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance, Victor's face paling as Dorothy detailed their findings. Patricia's champagne glass slipping from nerveless fingers, board members withdrawing to urgent whispered conversations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dorothy's voice rang out, steel wrapped in silk. "Tonight's program will be slightly altered. Instead of our usual presentations, we'll be announcing some significant changes to the fund's management structure." I felt Tom stiffen beside me as understanding dawned. Across the room, Victor's eyes locked onto mine, finally seeing what had been in front of him all along. Not just a board member's wife, but a warrior who'd spent months preparing for this moment. The future was about to arrive, ready or not. And it looked nothing like Victor had planned. The aftermath of Dorothy's announcement rippled through the ballroom like a shockwave. Crystal glasses clinked discordantly as hands trembled. Whispers crescendoed into urgent murmurs, and the city's financial elite struggled to process what they'd just heard. Victor Blackwood stood frozen near the podium, his perfect composure, cracking like thin ice under spring sun. "This is a mistake," Victor's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. "A tragic misunderstanding that could damage thousands of pensions if we don't handle it carefully." His eyes found mine, realization dawning as pieces clicked into place. Though perhaps some people intended exactly that outcome. Tom's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "Becky, what did you do?" The betrayal in his voice would have hurt more if I hadn't spent months preparing for this moment. If I hadn't remembered exactly how it felt when he'd first started dismissing my financial expertise in favor of Victor's outdated perspectives. Dorothy Hamilton stepped forward, commanding, attention with the ease of decades at the top. "The audit committee has uncovered significant irregularities in the fund's risk management protocols. Ms. Morrison, would you care to elaborate on your findings?" The room shifted as I moved toward the podium, dozens of faces swiveling to track my progress. These were people who'd spent years seeing me as nothing more than Tom's wife, a former analyst who'd gracefully retired to charity work. Now they would remember why I'd once been considered one of the sharpest minds on Wall Street. "The current investment strategy," I began, my voice steady as Marcus connected my laptop to the presentation system, "has exposed our pension fund to unprecedented levels of risk through complex derivative positions and flawed correlation assumptions." The first graphs appeared on the massive screens, beautiful, damning data that stripped away Victor's carefully constructed illusions. "Our artificial intelligence analysis has identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in the portfolio. Structure." I advanced through the slides, watching understanding dawn on faces that had dismissed me at countless charity galas. A mere 0.5% shift in interest rates could trigger a cascade of losses affecting every pension under management. Victor surged forward, his usual smooth mask cracking. "This is absurd. These models, this supposed artificial intelligence, it's fear-mongering from someone clearly out of touch with modern financial realities." "Actually," Marcus spoke up from the tech station, his young voice carrying authority that made several board members turn. "The AI models Ms. Morrison designed are far more advanced than anything currently in use by major funds. We've been running parallel analysis for months, predicting market movements with 89% accuracy." Sarah Chen stepped forward, audit documents in hand. "The committee has verified every finding. The risk exposure is real. and it's far worse than initially suspected. She met Victor's glare coolly. Though perhaps if you'd spent less time dismissing experienced voices as obsolete, you might have seen these problems yourself. Patricia. Blackwood's voice cut through the tension, sharp as broken glass. This is ridiculous. Rebecca, darling, you've clearly been working too hard on all this. Computer business. Why don't we take a break? Discuss this over coffee next week. I'm sure once you've had time to rest. I've had plenty of time to rest, Patricia. I pulled up the next series of projections. 7 years to be exact. 7 years watching Victor dismantle safety protocols that took decades to build. 7 years being told I was past my prime while the fund's risk profile became increasingly dangerous. Tom stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion and growing anger. You've been investigating Victor? Behind my back? Behind everyone's backs? No, Tom. I met his eyes steadily. I've been protecting thousands of families' futures while you were too busy playing golf with Victor to notice the danger. Or to remember that your wife actually understands modern finance. Dorothy's voice rang out again, crisp and authoritative. The audit committee's findings are clear. Immediate changes to fund management are required. She paused, her next words falling like hammer blows. Therefore, we are announcing an emergency board session for tomorrow morning. All current investment activities are suspended pending full review. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Board members huddled in urgent conferences. Phones appeared in manicured hands as Boston's elite rushed to protect their interests. And through it all, Victor stood silent, staring at me with an expression that mingled rage with dawning respect. You engineered this entire thing, he said, quietly as I passed him. The audit committee, the AI analysis, Dorothy's support. How long have you been planning my downfall? This isn't about your downfall, Victor. I kept my voice low, aware of the eyes watching us. It's about protecting people's retirements from outdated thinking and dangerous arrogance. Though I'll admit, watching you finally recognize my capabilities is a pleasant bonus. Patricia appeared at Victor's elbow, her social smile stretched thin. Rebecca, surely we can discuss this privately. Think about Tom's position, about your standing in the community. 7 years of marriage, of friendships, of connections. Are you really willing to risk it all over some computer models? Sarah materialized beside me, her presence solid and reassuring. I think what Rebecca's showing us is exactly what we risk by ignoring expertise based on gender or age. The numbers don't lie, Patricia, even if the social circle does. Marcus caught my eye from across the room, giving a subtle thumbs up. Everything we'd worked for was falling into place. The algorithms were running, the audit committee was convinced, and tomorrow's emergency board session would change everything. Tom's voice behind me was barely controlled fury. We need to talk, now. I turned to face my husband, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time in years. Yes, we do. But first, I have a board presentation to prepare. Dorothy, shall we? As Dorothy and I moved toward the exit, trailed by Sarah and Marcus with our critical data, I heard Victor's urgent whispers to his closest allies. He wouldn't go down without a fight. Tomorrow's board session would be brutal. But for the first time in 7 years, I felt fully, vibrantly alive. The drive home with Tom was arctic in its silence. He gripped the steering wheel like it might escape, his knuckles white under the passing streetlights. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, dangerous. You've spent months secretly building a case against my mentor, against the man who helped build my entire career. The car swung into our driveway more sharply than necessary. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've identified critical flaws in a pension system that's supposed to protect thousands of families. I met his gaze steadily. The real question, Tom, is why you stopped trusting my financial judgment in favor of a man who's been gambling with people's futures. Inside our home, the tension finally exploded. Gambling? Victor's strategy has produced record returns. He's revolutionized pension fund management, while you've been playing with computers and pretending to understand. Modern finance. Playing? I opened my laptop, bringing up our analysis. Look at these risk correlations, Tom. Really look at them. The derivatives exposure, the leverage levels, one market shift and everything collapses. Is that what you want your legacy to be? The man who stood by while retirement funds went up in smoke? He stared at the screens, years of financial training warring with loyalty to Victor. These models, they're really yours? With Marcus's help on implementation, yes. Turns out all those hours you thought I was at yoga or charity meetings, I was actually keeping up with financial technology. Imagine that. The grandfather clock ticked heavily in the silence. Finally, Tom sank into a chair, looking suddenly older. Why didn't you tell me? Why go behind my back? Would you have listened? I sat across from him, remembering countless dinners where he'd dismissed my concerns about Victor's strategies. The moment Victor became your mentor, you stopped seeing me as an equal. I became the wife who needed to gracefully step aside, focus on charity work, plan Mediterranean cruises while the men handled finance. His face flushed. That's not... You did, Tom. And worse, you never noticed how much it hurt to be dismissed by the man who once respected my expertise. I closed the laptop gently. Tomorrow morning, I'm presenting my complete findings to the board. Victor's management strategy will be exposed for what it is, and changes will be made. The only question is whether you'll remember who you married, in time to stand on the right side of history. My phone buzzed, Sarah confirming the final details for tomorrow's presentation. Dorothy had already secured the votes we'd need. Marcus's algorithms were compiling the last evidence that would dismantle Victor's house of cards. I need to work, I said, standing. The guest room is made up if you'd like space to think. As I climbed the stairs to my study, I heard Tom, on the phone, probably calling Victor, seeking explanation or guidance. Let them plot and plan. Tomorrow would show everyone exactly what happened when you underestimated a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The night passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah and Marcus joined me via video conference, refining our presentation, while Dorothy worked her network of board connections. Around midnight, an email arrived from Patricia. A final attempt at manipulation wrapped in concern for my emotional well-being and the importance of preserving social harmony. I drafted a simple reply. Harmony is less important than truth. See you at the board meeting. Dawn painted the Boston skyline in shades of promise as I dressed for battle. The charcoal suit was armor, the presentation USB my sword. Tom's side of the bed was untouched. He'd spent the night in the guest room after hours of hushed phone conversations. A text from Dorothy lit up my phone. Boardroom already filling. Victor's called in every favor he has. Ready? I thought. Of all the women who'd been pushed aside, told they were past their prime, expected to fade quietly into committees and charity work. Born ready. The Boston Financial Center lobby was chaos when I arrived. News of yesterday's audit findings had leaked, sending ripples through the financial community. Sarah met me at the elevator, her expression grim. Victor's trying to invalidate the audit committee's authority, claims Dorothy's too personally invested to be objective. She handed me a coffee. He's also hinting that your analysis is compromised by emotional factors and personal grievances. I smiled, thinking of the irrefutable data waiting in my briefcase. Let him try. Numbers don't care about politics or hurt feelings. The boardroom was a powder keg when we entered. Victor sat at the head of the table, his usual position of power, but the confident smile looked strained. Tom was nowhere to be seen. Shall we begin? Dorothy's voice cut through the tension. We have extensive findings to review, and I believe Ms. Morrison has a rather compelling presentation for us. I moved to the podium, feeling the weight of decades of dismissal, of patronizing smiles and redirected conversations. Good morning. Today, we're going to discuss the future of pension fund management, a future that prioritizes security over ego, innovation over tradition, and expertise over gender or age. The screens lit up with our first slides, and I began the presentation that would change everything. Victor's empire was about to fall, and from its ashes, something better would rise. Something led by those he'd tried to silence. The morning. Sun streamed through the boardroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany table where Boston's financial elite sat in stunned silence. My presentation had just shattered their comfortable illusions about the pension fund's stability. The AI-generated projections on the massive screens told a story of impending disaster that not even Victor could spin into success. These exposure levels, I continued, advancing to the next slide, exceed regulatory guidelines by factors of 3 to 7. Our blockchain-based tracking system has identified systematic underreporting of derivative positions spanning the last 18 months. The numbers flashed red on the screen, impossible to ignore or dismiss. Victor's carefully manicured hand rose, his signet ring catching the light. While these projections are certainly creative, they rely on untested technology and questionable assumptions. Perhaps we should consider the source and potential motivations behind this alleged analysis. Dorothy Hamilton's voice cut through his attempted deflection. The audit committee has independently verified every finding. The source code for Ms. Morrison's AI system has been reviewed by 3 separate firms. The numbers are accurate, Victor. The only question is how this was allowed to happen under your management. The boardroom doors opened silently, and Tom slipped in, his face unreadable. He'd changed from last night's tuxedo into his sharpest suit, battle armor for what was coming. Our eyes met briefly before he took a seat near the back, deliberately, neutral territory. Marcus stepped forward from his position at the tech station, tablet in hand. If I may, I'd like to demonstrate the real-time risk assessment capabilities of our system. His fingers flew across the screen, and new data began, populating the displays. As you can see, the market's opening movements are already triggering warning flags in 3 of the fund's major positions. Patricia Blackwood's perfectly modulated voice dripped with concern. This is all very dramatic, but surely we should consider the human element. The stress on our pensioners if they were to learn about these theories. Perhaps a more discreet review over time, with proper attention to market confidence. Market confidence? Sarah Chen's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. You mean your husband's reputation. Tell me, Patricia, how many of your charity committee members have their life savings in this fund? How many of them know their retirements are balanced on the edge of a knife? The room erupted in overlapping voices, board members arguing amongst themselves while Victor sat unnaturally still, his usual smooth confidence cracking at the edges. I caught Dorothy's subtle nod, time for the final blow. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice carried over the chaos, years of boardroom experience evident in every syllable. The data is clear, but numbers tell only part of the story. Marcus, please show them the simulation. The screens filled with our most powerful weapon, a real-time visualization of how Victor's strategy would respond to market stress. Red lines spread like cracks through the portfolio structure, showing exactly how one failed position would trigger a cascade of collapses. This isn't just about returns or regulations, I continued, watching understanding dawn on faces that had dismissed me for years. This is about 30,000 families whose futures depend on our decisions today. Families who trusted us to protect their retirements, not gamble them on increasingly risky strategies. Gamble? Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. I have generated consistent returns while you've been playing with computers and attending yoga classes. This presentation is nothing but a calculated attack on my reputation, driven by personal. Your reputation? The words escaped before I could contain them, years of suppressed fury finding voice. Let's talk about reputations, Victor. About how you systematically pushed aside experienced voices that questioned your methods. About how you convinced my husband and this board that women like me were past our prime, better suited to planning parties than protecting pensions. The room fell silent as Tom stood, all eyes turning to gauge his reaction. This was the moment that would define our future, personally and professionally. The numbers, he said, quietly moving to examine the nearest screen. These risk correlations, they're worse than 2008. Worse than anything I've seen in 20 years of trading. He turned to Victor, years of mentorship warring with his analytical training. How did you miss this? Or did you choose to ignore it? Victor's smile was strained. Tom, surely you of all people understand the complexities of modern portfolio management. These simplified models can't capture the sophisticated hedging strategies we've implemented. Actually, Marcus interjected, pulling up new data. Our AI system has mapped every hedge in the current portfolio structure. Would you like to see the true net exposure after accounting for all your sophisticated strategies? Dorothy's voice carried the weight of decades in finance. I think it's time we move to more immediate concerns. Given the audit committee's findings and this morning's presentation, I move for an immediate suspension of Mr. Blackwood's trading authority pending full investigation. The vote was swift and decisive. Even Victor's closest allies on the board couldn't ignore the evidence glowing on the screens around them. As security arrived to escort him from the building, he paused beside my chair. "Congratulations," he said softly, bitterness warring with reluctant respect. "You've destroyed something you don't fully understand. I hope you're prepared for the consequences." I met his gaze steadily. I understand perfectly. I understand that true expertise doesn't fade with age, that innovation isn't limited by gender, and that protecting people's futures matters more than protecting your ego. The next hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings, press statements, and rapid-fire decisions. Sarah and the audit committee began a deep dive into every position in the portfolio. Marcus worked with the tech team to implement our new risk management system. Dorothy coordinated with regulators who'd been quietly alerted to our findings. Through it all, Tom remained in the boardroom, studying the data we'd compiled with the focus he'd once been famous for on the trading floor. As the sun began to set, painting the Boston skyline in shades of gold, we found ourselves alone in the room where everything had changed. "You could have told me," he said finally, not looking up from the risk analysis displays. "All those months of secret meetings, of building this system, I would have understood." "Would you?" I moved to stand beside him, both of us reflected in the darkening windows. "The man who told me I should focus on age-appropriate activities when I questioned Victor's strategies? Who suggested I was too far removed from modern finance to understand what he was building?" He flinched. "I was wrong. Not just about Victor, but about you. About everything." "Yes, you were. You." The city lights began to twinkle on below us, a constellation of urban stars. "The question is, what happens now?" Before he could answer, Sarah burst into the room, her usual composure shaken. "Rebecca, you need to see this. Marcus's algorithms just flagged something in the overnight trading data. Victor wasn't just hiding risks, he was preparing for a specific market event. One that's starting to unfold in the Asian markets right now." Tom's head snapped up, years of market instincts kicking in. "Show us." The next hour was a testament to what we could achieve when working as equals. Tom's trading experience complemented my risk analysis as we worked with Marcus's technology to understand what Victor had really been building. By midnight, we had uncovered a strategy so dangerous it took our breath away. "He was creating a perfect storm," Tom said quietly, staring. at the complex web of positions we'd mapped. If these market conditions align, and they're starting to, the entire pension fund could implode within days. Unless we implement the protective strategies I've developed. I pulled up the contingency plans I'd spent months creating. But it will mean completely restructuring the portfolio, going against every tradition this fund has followed for decades. Sarah's phone buzzed with messages from other financial institutions, all sensing blood in the water. Whatever we're going to do, it needs to happen before the market opens. Once this gets out, do it. Tom's voice was firm. Implement the new system. Execute the restructuring. I'll handle the board. I studied my husband's face, seeing something I hadn't glimpsed in years. The man who'd once been my equal partner, who'd respected my expertise as much as I'd admired his. You're sure? This goes against everything Victor taught you. Victor taught me to protect my position, my status. He met my eyes directly. You reminded me to protect what really matters. Now show me how this new system of yours works. We've got a lot to do before dawn. As we worked through the night, implementing changes that would reshape pension fund management for decades to come, I thought about Victor's parting words. He'd been right about one thing. I had destroyed something. But what would rise from the ashes would be stronger, safer, and more equitable than anything he could have imagined. The future of finance wouldn't be determined by gender or age, but by expertise, innovation, and the courage to challenge broken systems. And as the first light of dawn painted the Boston sky in shades of promise, I knew we were just getting started. Dorothy found us still working as she arrived early the next morning, her expression approving as she took in the transformed data displays and the evidence of our all-night strategy session. "The board's waiting," she announced. "Time to show them what the future really looks like." I gathered my materials, feeling Tom's supportive presence beside me. Together, we would rebuild not just a pension fund, but a marriage based on mutual respect and shared purpose. Victor had tried to push me aside, to define me by my age and gender rather than my capabilities. Instead, he'd inspired a revolution in both finance and fairness. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying the old system, but building something better in its place. And as we walked into the boardroom to present our vision for the future, I knew this was just the beginning of a new era in pension fund management, one where experience was valued regardless of gender, where innovation wasn't limited by age, and where protecting people's futures mattered more than protecting the status quo. The revolution had begun, and there was no going back. The headline in the Financial Times screamed across my tablet screen, "Boston Pension Fund, Shake-up Signals Industry Revolution." 3 weeks had passed since the boardroom confrontation, and the ripples were still spreading through the financial world. I sat in my new office, Victor's old domain, reading the morning briefings as Marcus's AI system monitored global markets on the wall of screens behind me. "Another interview request," Sarah announced, striding in with her tablet. "Bloomberg wants your take on how artificial intelligence is reshaping pension fund management. And the Wall Street Journal is running a feature on women revolutionizing finance after 50. "Tell them I'm busy protecting retirements," I replied, studying a risk alert that had just popped up on one of the monitors. "Marcus, are you seeing this correlation shift in the Asian markets?" Marcus looked up from his coding station, his young face serious. "Already on it. The new algorithm caught it 20 minutes before traditional systems would have. Protective measures are being implemented automatically." The door opened again, admitting Dorothy Hamilton with a stack of industry reports. "The other major funds are starting to panic. 3 have already announced reviews of their risk management protocols. Victor's old allies are scrambling to distance themselves from his methods." I allowed myself a small smile, remembering Victor's parting words about destroying things I didn't understand. What he'd never grasped was that sometimes destruction was necessary for evolution. The screens behind me showed our new system working flawlessly, protecting thousands of pensions with technology he'd dismissed as unnecessary. "Ms. Morrison?" My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Blackwood's attorneys are here for the deposition preparation." The legal fallout from Victor's risk management failures had been inevitable. What he hadn't expected was the evidence trail our blockchain system had uncovered. Years of deliberately obscured risks, hidden in layers of complex derivatives. "Send them to the conference room," I replied, gathering my materials. "Sarah, can you handle the Hong Kong team's questions about implementing our new protocols?" Before Sarah could answer, Tom appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. "You need to see this. Patricia Blackwood just announced a competing pension fund initiative. She's positioning it as a return to traditional values in finance." Of course she was. Patricia had spent the last 3 weeks trying to salvage her social position after Victor's disgrace. Now she was attempting to rally the old guard, promising stability through familiar methods, the same methods that had nearly destroyed thousands of retirements. "Let her try," Dorothy said calmly, pulling up our latest performance metrics. "Our returns are speaking for themselves. More importantly, our risk management protocols have already prevented 3 potential crises." The morning sun streamed through the windows as we gathered around the conference table, reviewing our position. In 3 weeks, we'd completely restructured the fund's approach to pension management. Marcus's AI system monitored markets continuously, identifying risks and opportunities that human analysts might miss. Our blockchain infrastructure provided unprecedented transparency, showing pensioners exactly how their money was being protected. "The resistance isn't just about methods," Sarah pointed out, scrolling through industry responses. "We're challenging decades of assumptions about who should control financial decisions. Every woman over 40 in the industry is watching what happens here." She was right. My inbox was filled with messages from experienced female analysts and managers who'd been sidelined, told they were past their prime or too out of touch with modern finance. Victor's fall and my rise had given them hope and ammunition to challenge their own glass ceilings. "Mrs. Morrison?" A young analyst appeared in the doorway. "The simulation results you requested are ready. And there's something else you should see." The analyst, Emma Chen, Sarah's niece and a recent MIT graduate, pulled up a complex series of market projections. The AI system identified a pattern. The market conditions Victor was positioning for, they're starting to materialize, but not quite as he expected. If we adjust our hedging strategy now, we could turn his potential disaster into an opportunity, Tom finished, studying the data with the sharp focus that had first attracted me to him 2 decades ago. But it would mean going against standard industry practice. Again, I thought about the messages in my inbox, about all the women watching to see if I'd play it safe now that I had power. Standard industry practice is what got us into this mess. "Emma, work with Marcus to refine these projections. I want a full proposal in 2 hours." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The deposition preparation with Victor's lawyers revealed just how deeply our investigation had cut. Every attempt to explain away his decisions was met with data from our blockchain records. Every claim of reasonable risk management was countered by our AI system's analysis. "Your client exposed thousands of pensions to catastrophic risk," I told his lead attorney, my voice calm but firm. "The evidence isn't just clear, it's irrefutable. The only question is whether he wants to fight this in court, where every detail will become public record." The attorney's expression suggested he already knew the answer. Victor had built his career on appearances, on the confidence of his clients. A public trial would shatter what remained of both. As the legal team filed out, Patricia Blackwood swept in, her designer suit and perfect makeup a reminder of the world she still thought she controlled. "Rebecca, darling, I thought we might have lunch. Discuss this unfortunate situation like civilized people." I gestured to the screens surrounding us, each displaying real-time market data and risk analytics. I'm quite busy protecting people's retirements, Patricia, but I'm sure your new fund initiative will keep you equally occupied. Her smile tightened fractionally. You've made your point. Surely now it's time to consider smoothing things over, for everyone's sake. The club members are quite concerned about all this. Technological disruption. The club members, I replied, might want to check their own pension accounts. Our new system has already identified several funds using strategies similar to Victor's. The regulators are very interested in our findings. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. You're destroying relationships that took decades to build. Connections that benefited everyone, all for some. Computer models and mathematical theories. No, Patricia, I'm protecting people's futures. The fact that it's making some people uncomfortable is just a bonus. After she left, Tom found me staring out at the Boston skyline. That couldn't have been easy, he said quietly. You and Patricia were friends once. We were never friends. I turned to face him. I was just another trophy wife to her, someone to organize charity events and stay quietly in the background while men like Victor gambled with people's futures. He winced slightly, like I did, following Victor's lead, dismissing your concerns. The difference is, you remembered who I really am, who we were together before we let other people's expectations reshape our marriage. Emma's arrival interrupted the moment. The proposal's ready, and you really need to see these market projections. The next hour proved why we'd been right to trust young talent and new technology. Emma and Marcus walked us through a detailed analysis of emerging market patterns, showing how Victor's dangerous strategy could be turned into an opportunity if we were willing to break even more conventional rules. The risk is minimal, Marcus explained, his AI systems running complex simulations. Our hedging protocols can protect against worst-case scenarios while allowing us to benefit from the market inefficiencies Victor inadvertently created. Dorothy studied the projections with decades of experience. It's bold. The old guard will have fits, but... she smiled slowly. That's rather the point, isn't it? I looked around the room, at Sarah's confidence, Emma's brilliant young mind, Marcus's technological genius, Tom's rekindled passion for real financial innovation, and Dorothy's hard-earned wisdom. This was what Victor had feared, what Patricia was fighting against. Not just new methods, but a new way of thinking about who belonged in finance's highest circles. Implement the strategy, I decided, and prepare a detailed explanation. For our pensioners, they deserve to understand exactly how we're protecting their futures. As the team dispersed to execute our plans, Tom lingered. You know this will make Patricia's group even more aggressive. They'll use it to claim we're being reckless, destroying traditional values. Let them. I pulled up our performance. Metrics. 3 weeks of steady returns with significantly reduced risk. The numbers speak for themselves. And for every Patricia trying to drag us backward, there are dozens of experienced women finally speaking up, demanding the respect they've earned. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. You need to see this. Turn on CNBC. The financial news channel was running a special report. Breaking traditional barriers, how women over 50 are revolutionizing finance. The anchor was interviewing a panel of experienced female analysts and fund managers, all discussing how our story had inspired them to challenge their own institution's outdated assumptions. It's not just about age or gender, one panelist was saying. It's about recognizing that experience combined with innovation is more powerful than either alone. What's happening in Boston is proving that the future of finance belongs to those willing to evolve, regardless of their demographics. Dorothy appeared in the doorway, her expression satisfied. The regulators just called. 3 more funds have disclosed risk management issues similar to Victor's. They're requesting our help in implementing proper controls. I thought about Victor's parting words again, about destroying things I didn't understand. He'd been wrong. We weren't destroying finance. We were evolving it, making it stronger, more transparent, more equitable. Send them our implementation guidelines, I told Dorothy, and have Marcus prepare a training program. It's time to show the industry what the future really looks like. As the afternoon sun painted Boston's financial district in shades of possibility, I watched our systems protect thousands of pensions with technology that hadn't existed when I'd started my career. On one screen, Emma was explaining our risk protocols to a team from Singapore. On another, Marcus's AI was identifying patterns that human analysts might have missed for weeks. This was what victory really looked like. Not just personal triumph, but systematic change. Every woman watching our story, every experienced voice that had been silenced, was finding new courage to speak up, to innovate, to lead. Victor had tried to push me aside, claiming I was past my prime. Instead, he'd inspired a revolution that was reshaping the very foundations of pension fund management. Sometimes the most powerful response to dismissal isn't anger or revenge, but evolution and growth. And we were just getting started. The Milan conference room buzzed with anticipation as I adjusted my presentation materials. 5 weeks had passed since our revolution in Boston, and now Europe's largest pension funds had gathered to learn about our new approach to risk management. In the front row, I spotted 3 familiar faces, women near my age who'd recently been appointed to senior positions after years of being overlooked. "The live feed is ready," Marcus whispered, setting up our secure connection to the AI systems back in Boston. "Sarah says the Asian markets are showing some interesting patterns. Should I have Emma start analyzing them?" Before I could respond, a distinguished Italian banker approached, his English precise and formal. "Ms. Morrison, your reputation precedes you, though I must admit some of our more traditional board members have expressed concerns about adopting such radical changes." The door opened, admitting a stream of Europe's financial elite. Among them, I noticed Patricia Blackwood's closest European ally, Countess de Vries, her expression suggesting she'd rather be anywhere else. The old guard was monitoring us closely, looking for any sign of weakness or failure. "Tradition," I replied smoothly, "is only valuable when it protects rather than endangers. Our results speak for themselves." I gestured to the screens where our real-time risk management system displayed its effectiveness. "Shall we begin?" The next hour demonstrated exactly why our approach was reshaping global finance. As I walked through our integration of artificial intelligence and blockchain technology, even the skeptics leaned forward, their expressions shifting from doubt to interest. When I pulled up the comparison between traditional risk metrics and our new system's early warning capabilities, several attendees began furiously taking notes. "The key," I explained, highlighting a particularly complex risk correlation, "is understanding that experience and innovation aren't mutually exclusive. Our success comes from combining decades of market knowledge with cutting-edge technology." A hand rose from the middle of the room. Elena Rossi, recently appointed head of Italy's largest pension fund. "Your results are impressive, but the cultural shift required. How did you overcome the resistance?" I thought about Victor's dismissals, about Patricia's attempts to maintain the old order, about all the women who'd been told they were past their prime. By proving that the future of finance belongs to those who embrace change, regardless of age or gender. My phone buzzed, an urgent message from Sarah. The pattern Emma had spotted in the Asian markets was developing faster than expected. Our AI system had already implemented protective measures for our fund, but other institutions remained exposed. "In fact," I continued, pulling up the live data, "we're seeing a perfect example right now. Marcus, show them what our system detected 3 hours ago." The screens filled with real-time market analysis. highlighting growing instabilities that traditional risk management might have missed until too late. Several bankers reached for their phones, suddenly concerned about their own exposures. "Ladies and gentlemen," I gestured to the complex patterns unfolding before us. "This is why experience matters." A purely algorithmic approach might miss the subtle implications here, but combine artificial intelligence with decades of market knowledge. "And you protect thousands of pensions," Elena finished, her eyes bright with understanding, "while creating opportunities traditional methods would miss." The Countess de Vries stood abruptly. "This is all very impressive, but some of us remember the value of established methodologies, methods that have served us well for generations. Like the methods that nearly destroyed our fund?" I pulled up the historical comparison. The same approaches that exposed countless retirements to unnecessary risk? Those traditions? The room fell silent as the data told its story. Our new system had prevented 3 major losses in the past month alone, while funds clinging to traditional methods faced growing instabilities. "Change is never comfortable," I acknowledged, watching. The Countess's expression tightened. "But comfort isn't our primary responsibility. Protecting people's futures is." After the presentation, Elena and several other fund managers lingered, eager to discuss implementation details. The energy in the room reminded me of my early days at Morgan Stanley, before age and gender expectations had started limiting opportunities. "Your story has inspired many of us," Elena said quietly as the others gathered around Marcus's technical demonstration. "Last week, our board appointed 2 women over 50 to senior positions. 10 years of expertise they'd been wasting." My phone lit up with another message from Sarah. "Emma's analysis was perfect. 3 major funds just requested emergency consultations. The pattern she identified is spreading exactly as predicted." I smiled, remembering Victor's certainty that women my age couldn't understand modern finance. Experience matters, innovation matters, but most importantly, having the courage to challenge outdated assumptions matters. The afternoon brought a series of meetings with European regulatory bodies, all suddenly very interested in our risk management protocols. Each presentation reinforced what we'd discovered in Boston. The industry wasn't just ready for change, it was desperate for it. "The resistance isn't about technology," Dorothy observed during our evening video conference. "It's about power. Every fund that adopts our system is challenging decades of entrenched control." She was right. Patricia's competing initiative was struggling precisely because it promised to maintain the status quo in a world demanding evolution. The old networks of club memberships and social connections were giving way to something more meritocratic. "Speaking of power shifts," Sarah interrupted, "you need to see these numbers from Singapore. Remember that pattern Emma spotted?" She just finished a deep analysis of its implications. The data painted a fascinating picture. A series of market inefficiencies created by multiple funds following outdated risk management approaches had generated an unprecedented opportunity, but capitalizing on it would mean convincing dozens of institutions to coordinate their responses. "Get me Elena," I decided, "and any other fund managers ready to embrace real innovation. It's time to show the industry what experienced voices and new technology can really accomplish." The next morning's Financial Times headline reflected the growing shift. "Global pension funds embrace AI integration. Industry veterans lead innovation." The article highlighted how funds adopting our approach were consistently outperforming those clinging to traditional methods. My inbox overflowed with messages from women around the world, sharing stories of being sidelined or dismissed. Each one reinforced why our success mattered beyond just financial returns. We were proving that experience and innovation could coexist, that being past your prime was a meaningless concept in an industry desperate for real expertise. A message from Tom caught my eye. "Patricia's group is calling an emergency meeting. Apparently, the Countess is demanding they take a more aggressive stance against dangerous modernization. Let them plot and plan. Their resistance only proved we were succeeding. Every fund that adopted our methods, every experienced voice that found new authority, was another crack in their crumbling facade. Ms. Morrison? Emma's voice came through my laptop. The Singapore analysis is complete. If we coordinate with Elena's fund and the others who've adopted our system. Send me everything, I replied, watching our AI monitors track the growing market pattern. And Emma? Remember how Victor said women our age couldn't understand modern finance? Her laugh was delighted. Pretty sure the last month has proven him wrong about a lot of things. Back in the conference room, Marcus was explaining our blockchain infrastructure to a group of Swiss bankers. Their questions showed growing understanding of how transparency and technology could enhance rather than replace human expertise. The key, he emphasized, is recognizing that artificial intelligence works best when guided by genuine experience. Our system's success comes from combining Mrs. Morrison's market knowledge with cutting-edge technology. My phone buzzed again. Dorothy this time. Regulatory bodies from 3 countries just requested our compliance protocols, and Sarah's presenting our risk management framework to the London Exchange tomorrow. The revolution was spreading faster than even we had anticipated. Every presentation, every successful prediction, every crisis averted proved that the future of finance belonged to those willing to evolve. Age and gender were becoming irrelevant in the face of demonstrated expertise. Elena caught up with me as I prepared for the afternoon sessions. The coordinate response you proposed. My board has approved it. We're ready to move whenever you give the signal. I studied the live market feeds, watching the pattern Emma had identified continue to develop. If we timed this right, we wouldn't just protect our funds from instability, we'd demonstrate the power of combining experience with innovation on a global scale. Tell your team to be ready, I decided. Tomorrow morning, we're going to show the world what the future of pension fund management really looks like. The sun set over Milan's ancient skyline as I made my final preparations. Somewhere in Boston, Patricia and her allies were probably plotting their next move, still believing they could hold back the tide of change, still insisting that tradition and established networks mattered more than expertise and innovation. Let them cling to their fading certainties. Tomorrow would prove again what happened when you dismissed experienced voices, when you assumed technology belonged only to the young, when you tried to maintain power structures that served the few at the expense of the many. My phone lit up with messages from fund managers around the world, all confirming their participation in tomorrow's coordinated strategy. Each one represented another crack in the glass ceiling, another voice refusing to be silenced or sidelined. Victor had tried to push me aside, claiming I was past my prime. Instead, he'd inspired a revolution that was reshaping global finance. Sometimes the most powerful response to dismissal isn't anger or revenge. It's proving just how wrong they were about your capabilities. And tomorrow, we would prove it again, on a scale the industry had never seen before. Dawn painted Singapore's financial district in shades of possibility as Emma Chen's voice came through my secure video feed. Asian markets are responding exactly as projected. Our AI system just confirmed the pattern is holding steady across all major exchanges. From screens around my temporary office in Milan's financial center, I watched as 30 years of experience merged with cutting-edge technology. Market data flowed across multiple time zones, each movement confirming what our algorithms had predicted. What Emma, with her brilliant young mind, had first spotted. London's online, Sarah announced, her image joining our secure conference. 6 major pension funds standing by. Dorothy's got the regulatory bodies briefed and ready. Elena Rossi entered my office, tablet in hand. European partners are confirmed, though the Countess is making noise about reckless coordination and dangerous departures from proven methods. I smiled. remembering similar warnings from Victor months ago. Show me the latest risk assessments. Marcus's AI system responded instantly, flooding our screens with real-time analytics. The pattern Emma had identified was creating a unique opportunity, but only for funds agile enough to respond collectively. Traditional management methods would miss it entirely. Mrs. Morrison? A young Italian analyst appeared in my doorway. You have a call from Boston. It's Mrs. Blackwood. Patricia. Of course she'd heard about our coordinated strategy. Her competing fund initiative was hemorrhaging support as more institutions adopted our methods. This call wouldn't be friendly. Rebecca. Her voice dripped concern through the speaker. I've just heard the most disturbing rumors. Surely you're not planning to coordinate some sort of global market movement. Think of the stability implications, the tradition of independent fund management. Actually, Patricia, I kept my tone professional. We're about to demonstrate exactly why that tradition needs updating. But don't worry, our AI systems have run over 10,000 simulations. The risk is minimal, especially compared to the strategies Victor preferred. A sharp intake of breath. This isn't just about Victor anymore. You're attacking the very foundations of proper fund management. The club members, I interrupted, might want to check their own fund's performance metrics. Or haven't you noticed how many of them have quietly started adopting our methods? After ending the call, I turned to Elena. Time to make history. Signal the European teams. The next hours unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance across time zones. As Asian markets closed, European exchanges picked up the pattern. Our coordinated funds moved in perfect synchronization, guided by AI systems that processed market data faster than any human could follow. Look at these efficiency gains. Emma's excitement carried through the video feed. Traditional methods would have missed at least 60% of these opportunities. She was right. On the screens around us, 30,000 lines of code, merged with decades of market experience to protect and grow pension funds across 3 continents. Every movement validated our core belief that experience and innovation were strongest when combined. Regulatory feedback is positive, Dorothy reported from Boston. They're particularly impressed by the transparency our blockchain infrastructure provides. Every transaction, every decision point is fully traceable. Sarah's voice cut in urgently. Heads up, Patricia's group just issued a statement. They're calling this dangerous manipulation and reckless disregard for established practices. Send them our performance metrics, I decided, particularly the risk mitigation data. Let's see them argue with mathematical certainty. A knock at my door revealed the Italian banker who'd been skeptical at yesterday's presentation. His expression had shifted from doubt to something approaching awe. Ms. Morrison, my board has been watching your coordinated response. We may have been hasty in our concerns about modern methods. Modern methods guided by experienced hands, I corrected gently. The technology is powerful, but it's the human expertise directing it that makes the real difference. More messages poured in as London's trading day peaked. Fund managers who'd dismissed our approach were suddenly very interested in implementation details. Institutions that had clung to traditional methods were watching their competitors surge ahead through coordinated efficiency. Mrs. Morrison? Emma's voice held a note of triumph. The pattern's playing out exactly as we projected. Every fund in our network is showing positive returns while maintaining minimal risk exposure. And you really need to see these broader market implications. The data told a compelling story. Our coordinated response hadn't just protected and grown our own funds, it had actually helped stabilize several market inefficiencies that traditional methods had been exacerbating. We weren't just succeeding, we were making the entire system more robust. Get me Elena, I instructed my assistant. And any other. Fund managers ready to join our network. Phase 2 starts in 30 minutes. Elena arrived as Marcus's system was updating its risk projections. The Countess is apparently having fits. she reported with a slight smile. Something about unseemly technological dependence and abandoning proper financial dignity. Show her these numbers. I pulled up our latest performance metrics. Dignity doesn't protect pensions. Innovation guided by experience does. My phone buzzed with a message from Tom. You need to see this. CNBC is running a special report on the revolution in pension management. They're calling it a watershed moment in financial history. Turning to the financial news feed, I watched as analysts struggled to explain what was happening. Our coordinated funds were demonstrating efficiency levels that traditional models had claimed were impossible. Every market tick validated our approach, proving that age and gender were irrelevant compared to expertise and innovation. Tokyo's asking to join our network, Sarah reported. And 3 major Canadian funds. The algorithm Emma developed for integrating new partners is handling everything beautifully. Emma's voice held well-deserved pride. The AI system is already adapting to account for their specific market conditions and regulatory requirements. Integration should be seamless. A new message flashed across my screen from Patricia's chief strategist. Their fund had just lost another major client to our network. The old guard was crumbling faster than even we had anticipated. Mrs. Morrison? My assistant appeared again. The Financial Times wants your comment on how this coordinated strategy is reshaping global pension fund management. And Mrs. Blackwood is in the lobby. She's demanding to speak with you. I thought about Victor's warnings, about Patricia's resistance, about all the voices that had insisted women my age couldn't understand modern finance. Tell Patricia I'm a bit busy revolutionizing the industry she thought I was too old to understand. The afternoon brought a cascade of validation. Regulatory bodies praised our transparency protocols. Fund managers who'd adopted our methods reported unprecedented efficiency gains. Even traditional investment firms were suddenly very interested in experienced voices they'd previously dismissed. Look at this. Elena gestured to a market analysis screen. The pattern Emma identified? It's creating opportunities we never even considered. If we adjust our coordination protocols? Do it, I authorized. Show them what happens when you combine young brilliance with seasoned expertise. My phone lit up with a message from Dorothy. Victor's lawyers reached out. Apparently, seeing his strategies so thoroughly outperformed is encouraging a more cooperative attitude toward the legal proceedings. Let him watch as everything he'd dismissed reshaped the industry he thought he controlled. Every market tick proved that experience wasn't about age, that innovation wasn't limited by gender, that the future belonged to those who could evolve. Ms. Morrison? The Italian banker was back, this time with several colleagues. Our board has unanimously approved adopting your methods. We hope there's still room in your network. I gestured to Marcus's screens, where our AI system was already analyzing their potential integration. There's always room for institutions ready to embrace real innovation. Emma, start their onboarding protocols. As sunset approached, the scope of our success became clear. The coordinated strategy had exceeded even our optimistic projections. Funds in our network had achieved returns that traditional methods couldn't match, while maintaining unprecedented risk control. Final performance metrics are coming in, Sarah reported. Every participating fund showed positive gains. More importantly, our risk exposure levels were significantly lower than conventional approaches. Emma's voice held satisfaction. The AI system is already identifying similar opportunities for next week. With our expanded network, the coordination potential is even stronger. I studied the global market feeds, watching as our revolution rippled through the financial world. Patricia's competing initiative, built on maintaining traditional power structures, was becoming increasingly irrelevant. The future was arriving, ready or not. Mrs. Morrison? My assistant appeared one final time. The Wall Street Journal is running a feature tomorrow. How women over 50 are revolutionizing global finance. They'd like your comment on being called the catalyst for the industry's most significant evolution in decades. I thought about Victor's dismissal, about Patricia's attempts to maintain the old order, about all the experienced voices that had been silenced or sidelined. Tell them the real story isn't about age or gender. It's about what happens when you combine true expertise with genuine innovation. A new message flashed. Elena had spotted another market pattern developing, one that our expanded network could address in ways traditional funds couldn't even attempt. Get me Dorothy. And Sarah, I instructed. And tell Emma to start running projections. Tomorrow we prove again why experience matters. The sun set over Milan's ancient architecture as our modern revolution continued reshaping global finance. Somewhere in Boston, Patricia and her allies were probably still plotting to maintain their crumbling power structure. Still insisting that tradition mattered more than results. Let them cling to their fading certainties. Every market tick, every coordinated success, every protected pension proved them wrong. The future belonged to those who could evolve, who could combine experience with innovation, who understood that true expertise had no expiration date. Victor had tried to push me aside, claiming I was past my prime. Instead, he'd inspired a transformation that was rewriting the rules of global finance. Sometimes the most powerful response to dismissal isn't argument or anger. It's demonstrating just how wrong they were about everything. Autumn sunlight streamed through the windows of my Boston office as I reviewed the latest expansion proposals. 8 weeks had passed since our coordinated strategy had reshaped global pension fund management, and the ripples were still spreading. On my desk, The Economist's latest issue featured our story. The Gray Revolution: How Experience is Disrupting Finance. Tokyo's integration is complete, Emma announced, entering with fresh market analyses. Their risk metrics already show significant improvement, and Beijing just confirmed they want to join the network. Our success had triggered a cascade of change across the industry. Traditional fund managers who'd dismissed our methods were now scrambling to adapt. More importantly, experienced voices that had been sidelined were finding new authority. Mrs. Morrison, my assistant appeared in the doorway. The Senate Financial Committee has confirmed your testimony date, and Mrs. Blackwood is here, again. Patricia. She'd been trying to arrange a meeting for weeks, ever since her competing initiative had lost its last major supporter. The old networks of club memberships and social connections were crumbling as performance metrics told an undeniable story. Send her in, I decided, watching our AI system track market movements across multiple continents. Let her see exactly what women she'd dismissed as past their prime could accomplish. Patricia entered, her designer suit and perfect makeup a armor against changing times. But something was different in her expression. Less certainty, more calculation. Rebecca, darling, you've been quite difficult to reach lately. Managing a global network of pension funds keeps one rather busy, I replied, gesturing to the screens where Marcus's system displayed real-time risk analytics. But I suspect you're not here to discuss market efficiency. She settled into a chair, studying the complex data flows with newfound respect. The club members, that is, my investment group. We've been reviewing your results. Your methods, while unconventional, show undeniable merit. Translation: they were losing clients and needed access to our network. Unconventional? I pulled up our latest performance comparisons. You mean consistently outperforming traditional strategies while maintaining superior risk control? Those unconventional methods? A knock interrupted us, Sarah arriving with Dorothy and Elena, who'd flown in from Milan for our strategy session. Their presence clearly threw Patricia off balance. These were women her social circle had once dismissed, now leading a revolution in global finance. Patricia, Dorothy's greeting held decades of boardroom battles. How lovely to see you embracing innovation, though perhaps a bit late in the game? Before Patricia could respond, Emma burst in, her young face excited. The algorithm just spotted something huge. A pattern emerging across Asian and European markets. If we coordinate our network's response, I gestured for her to continue, watching Patricia's expression shift as she witnessed the seamless collaboration between youth and experience. Emma's brilliant technical skills merged with our decades of market knowledge, creating insights that neither could achieve alone. Show me the projections, Elena requested, moving to study the data. If this develops as indicated, traditional funds won't even see the opportunity until it's passed. Patricia stood abruptly. Perhaps we could discuss a potential collaboration. Our resources combined with your technological advantages. You mean our proven expertise? Sarah's voice held steel beneath its professional tone. The same expertise your group dismissed as outdated just months ago? My phone buzzed. Marcus sending urgent updates. The pattern Emma had spotted was developing faster than expected. Our AI system was already preparing coordinated responses across the network. I appreciate the offer, I told Patricia, already, focusing on the emerging market situation. But we're rather particular about our partners. We prefer those who value experience before circumstances force them to. After she left, Elena laughed softly. The mighty Blackwood social circle, coming to beg for inclusion. Victor must be having fits. Speaking of Victor, Dorothy added, the legal team says he's finally ready to settle. Seeing his old methods so thoroughly obsolete seems to have damaged his certainty. Emma's voice cut through our satisfaction. You really need to see these projections. The pattern isn't just an opportunity. It's revealing systemic risks in funds still using traditional methods. The screens told a sobering story. Our network's success had exposed weaknesses in conventional pension management approaches. Funds that hadn't evolved were becoming increasingly vulnerable to market shifts that our AI system could predict and protect against. Alert the regulatory bodies, I decided, and prepare a detailed analysis for the Senate committee. They need to understand what's really at stake. Sarah's tablet chimed with incoming data. 3 more funds just requested emergency integration protocols. They're seeing the same warning signs we are. I studied the complex patterns flowing across our monitors. What had started as a personal stand against age and gender discrimination had evolved into something far more significant. We weren't just proving that experience mattered. We were protecting global retirement funds from systemic risks. Mrs. Morrison? My assistant appeared again. The Harvard Business School dean is calling. They want to develop a case study about our integration of AI and experienced human oversight. Emma looked up from her analysis. We should accept. Show the next generation of finance professionals what's possible when you stop limiting talent with arbitrary barriers. She was right. Every market tick validated our core belief that true expertise had no expiration date, that innovation wasn't limited by gender or age, that the future belonged to those who could combine wisdom with technological advancement. Dorothy, I turned to our senior strategist. How quickly can we scale up the network's integration capacity? If these systemic risks are as significant as they appear. Already on it, she replied, her decades of experience evident in her rapid assessment. Marcus's AI system can handle twice our current partnership level. The real question is human oversight bandwidth. Elena's smile was knowing. I might have a solution for that. Remember those experienced analysts that traditional funds pushed aside? They've formed a talent pool that's rather eager to prove their worth. Perfect. Women who'd faced the same dismissal and discrimination we had, now positioned to help protect the very institutions that had undervalued them. The irony would not be lost on Victor or Patricia. My phone lit up with a message from Tom. You need to see this. The Financial Times is running an analysis of how our network's expansion is reshaping global risk management standards. Turning to the financial newsfeed, I watched as market experts struggled to explain our impact. Traditional fund managers were being forced to acknowledge that their resistance to change had created vulnerabilities, that their dismissal of experienced voices had left them dangerously exposed. "Mrs. Morrison?" Emma's voice held that particular tone that meant she'd spotted something significant. The algorithm's forecasting potential ripple effects from these systemic risks. If conventional funds don't adapt quickly enough, "Show me everything," I requested, already knowing we'd be working late into the night. This wasn't just about proving critics wrong anymore. It was about protecting retirement funds worldwide from outdated thinking. The next hours passed, in a blur of coordinated responses and strategic planning. Our network's AI system identified vulnerability patterns that human analysts might have taken months to spot. But it was our combined decades of market experience that shaped the response strategies. "Look at this efficiency," Emma marveled, displaying performance metrics across multiple markets. Traditional funds would have missed at least 70% of these protective opportunities. She was right. On screens around us, 30 years of expertise merged with cutting-edge technology to safeguard pensions across 3 continents. Every data point proved that true innovation required both wisdom and advancement. Mrs. Morrison, my assistant, appeared one final time. The World Economic Forum called. They want you to keynote their session on the future of financial innovation. And Mrs. Blackwood's investment group just lost another major client to our network. I thought about Patricia's belated attempt at collaboration, about Victor's crumbling certainties, about all the voices that had insisted women our age couldn't understand modern finance. Tell the forum I'll speak about how experience and innovation are transforming global finance, whether the old guard is ready or not. A new alert flashed across our screens. Emma's algorithm had identified another emerging pattern, one that our expanded network could address in ways traditional funds couldn't even comprehend. "Get me the integration team," I instructed, "and tell Marcus to start running simulations. Tomorrow we demonstrate again why dismissing experienced voices is more than just discrimination. It's dangerous business practice." The Boston skyline glittered as night fell, a constellation of lights reflecting our global reach. Somewhere in those towers, Patricia's social circle was probably still struggling to understand how their world had changed so dramatically, still wondering how the women they'd dismissed had revolutionized global finance. Let them wonder. Every market tick, every coordinated success, every protected pension proved what we'd known all along. That expertise didn't expire, that innovation wasn't age-limited, that the future belonged to those who could evolve beyond outdated prejudices. Victor had tried to push me aside, claiming I was too old to understand modern finance. Instead, he'd inspired a transformation that was rewriting the rules of global pension management. Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger or argument. It's proving that the very qualities they dismissed are exactly what the industry needs. The Senate hearing room hummed with tension as I adjusted my microphone. Marble columns rose behind the Financial Committee members, their expressions ranging from skeptical to intrigued. My testimony about modernizing pension fund regulations had drawn an unexpectedly large audience, including several familiar faces from Boston's financial elite. "Mrs. Morrison," Senator Harrison began, peering over her glasses, "your network's approach to pension fund management has generated remarkable results. But some traditional institutions express concern about the speed and scope of these changes." I glanced at my tablet where Emma's latest market analysis glowed with urgent implications. Our AI system had identified new systemic risks in funds still clinging to conventional methods, risks that threatened millions of retirements. "Senator, tradition is valuable when it protects. But when it endangers pensions through outdated thinking, tradition becomes irresponsibility. I gestured to the data displays we'd prepared. Allow me to demonstrate why evolution isn't just desirable. It's essential. For the next hour, I walked the committee through our findings. The complex patterns our integrated approach could identify and address. The vulnerabilities in traditional systems that our network had helped stabilize. Every data point reinforced what we'd been proving for months. That experience combined with innovation was transforming global finance. Impressive metrics, Senator Chen noted, studying the risk analysis charts. Though Mrs. Blackwood's group suggests your methods might destabilize established financial relationships. Of course, Patricia's team would focus on social implications, rather than actual performance. I pulled up our latest network results. With respect, Senator, I believe protecting pensions matters more than protecting social hierarchies. Movement near the back of the room caught my eye. Tom entering quietly, followed by Sarah and Dorothy. Their presence reminded me how far we'd come from those first confrontations in Boston. How a stand against age discrimination had evolved into a revolution in financial safety. My phone vibrated silently. Marcus sending urgent updates. The pattern Emma had spotted was developing faster than projected. Our network's AI system was already implementing protective measures, but funds still using traditional methods remained exposed. Mrs. Morrison, another senator, leaned forward. Your testimony suggests that funds refusing to modernize their approach are creating systemic risks. Could you elaborate? Before I could respond, Elena slipped me a note. Tokyo markets. Confirming pattern. Beijing requesting emergency consultation. Network responses holding steady. I squared my shoulders, facing the committee directly. When funds dismiss experienced voices, when they resist technological innovation due to age or gender bias, they don't just limit themselves, they endanger the entire system. The next series of charts demonstrated exactly what we meant. Our network's coordinated responses had repeatedly prevented cascade effects that traditional methods couldn't even detect. Each example proved that true expertise had no expiration date. But surely, an older senator interrupted, traditional relationship-based management has served the industry well for generations. These technological solutions are guided by decades of market experience, I finished firmly. Our success comes from combining wisdom with innovation, not replacing one with the other. A message flashed across my tablet. Emma had identified another critical pattern emerging, one that perfectly illustrated our point about systemic risks. In fact, Senator, we're seeing a real-time example. Marcus, please display the current market data. The room's screens filled with live analytics showing how our network was already responding to instabilities that conventional funds hadn't noticed. Several committee members leaned forward, suddenly very interested in the implications. This is more than theoretical, I explained, highlighting key risk indicators. Right now, funds using outdated methods are exposed to market shifts that our integrated approach can predict and protect against. The only question is whether regulation will evolve fast enough to prevent unnecessary losses. Senator Harrison studied the data intently. And your network's success rate in preventing such losses. I gestured to Dorothy, who stepped forward with our performance metrics. 30 years of market experience combined with cutting-edge AI had produced results that traditional managers had claimed were impossible. The numbers speak for themselves, Dorothy stated, her voice carrying decades of authority. But perhaps more telling is how many conventional funds are now requesting emergency integration into our network. My phone lit up with another urgent message. Sarah coordinating responses across 3 continents as the pattern Emma had spotted continued developing. Our AI system was handling the complexity beautifully, proving again why evolution was essential. Mrs. Morrison, Senator Chen's voice cut through the technical discussion. Your approach isn't just changing fund management. It's reshaping power structures that have existed for generations. How do you respond to concerns about disrupting established industry relationships? I thought about Victor's dismissals, about Patricia's social hierarchies, about all the experienced voices that had been silenced by tradition. Senator, when established relationships value age over expertise, gender over capability, tradition over innovation, they deserve disruption. Movement in the audience drew attention to Patricia entering with several club members. Their expressions suggested they weren't pleased with the direction of my testimony. Let them worry. Every market tick proved our methods superior to their outdated approaches. Your network's expansion has been remarkable, Senator Harrison observed. Though, some suggest it's growing too quickly, consolidating too much influence. With respect, Senator, I interrupted gently. Influence already was consolidated, just among those who valued social connections over actual expertise. We're simply ensuring that influence flows to those most capable of protecting pensions. Emma's voice came through my earpiece. Pattern confirmation from European markets. Network responses optimal. Traditional funds showing increased vulnerability. Perfect timing. Allow me to demonstrate exactly why rapid expansion was necessary, I suggested, pulling up the latest market data. Our network just identified and responded to instabilities that conventional methods won't recognize for hours. The screens told a compelling story of coordinated efficiency across multiple time zones. Every metric proved that combining experienced oversight with technological innovation produced superior results. Traditional managers in the audience shifted uncomfortably as their methods were shown increasingly obsolete. Mrs. Morrison, a younger senator, spoke up. Your testimony suggests this isn't just about modernizing technology. It's about recognizing undervalued expertise. Could you elaborate? I thought about all the women watching this hearing, all the experienced voices that had been told they were past their prime. When funds dismiss analysts based on age or gender, they don't just commit discrimination. They compromise their capability to protect pensions. My tablet lit up with fresh data. The pattern Emma had identified was creating opportunities that our network could capitalize on while protecting against related risks. Opportunities that traditional funds would completely miss. The choice is clear, I continued, highlighting key metrics. We can evolve beyond outdated biases and protect retirement funds properly, or cling to traditions that increasingly endanger them. Our network has demonstrated which approach works better. Senator Harrison's expression suggested she understood the broader implications. As one of the few senior women on the committee, she'd likely faced similar dismissals in her own career. Your results are certainly compelling, she acknowledged, though Mrs. Blackwood's group insists that some industry traditions serve valuable purposes, like ensuring power remains concentrated among certain social circles. I pulled up comparative performance data. I believe results matter more than club membership, Senator. Our network's success proves that expertise isn't limited by age or gender. It's enhanced by combining experience with innovation. A message from Marcus caught my eye. 3 more major funds requesting emergency integration protocols. They'd seen the pattern developing and realized their traditional methods left them dangerously exposed. In fact, I added, we're seeing another example of why evolution is crucial. Emma, please display the current market analysis. The screens filled with real-time data showing how our network was protecting pensions across multiple continents, while conventional funds remained vulnerable. Several committee members began taking urgent notes. This isn't just about returns, I emphasized, highlighting risk metrics that proved our point. It's about recognizing that true financial safety requires both experienced oversight and technological advancement. Neither alone is sufficient. Dorothy stepped forward again, adding decades of credibility to our presentation. The audit committee has verified every finding. Our blockchain infrastructure provides unprecedented transparency in pension fund management. Senator Chen studied the complex data flows with growing understanding. And traditional funds resistant to these changes are creating systemic risks, I confirmed, displaying vulnerability patterns that our AI system had identified. By dismissing experienced voices and resisting technological innovation, they endanger not just their own pensioners, but the broader financial system. My phone buzzed with updates from Sarah. Our network's coordinated responses were working perfectly, protecting millions of retirements while generating sustainable returns. Every metric proved that combining wisdom with innovation produced superior results. Mrs. Morrison, Senator Harrison leaned forward. Your testimony today suggests we need to fundamentally rethink how retirement funds are managed. How quickly could other institutions adopt your methods? I glanced at my tablet, where Emma's latest analysis showed increasing instabilities in conventional approaches. Senator, the real question is whether they can afford not to evolve. The market patterns we're tracking right now prove that traditional methods are becoming dangerously obsolete. The hearing room fell silent as implications sank in. This wasn't just about modernizing technology or recognizing experience. It was about protecting millions of people's futures from outdated thinking and arbitrary barriers. Thank you for your testimony, Senator Harrison concluded. I believe you've given us much to consider regarding the future of pension fund regulation. As the hearing adjourned, I caught Patricia's expression, a mixture of frustration and dawning respect. Let her and her social circle wrestle with change. Every market tick proved that experience combined with innovation was the future of finance, whether they accepted it or not. My phone lit up with another message from Emma. The pattern was creating opportunities that our expanded network could capitalize on while protecting against related risks. Opportunities that traditional funds would completely miss due to their resistance to change. Ready for the next phase? Sarah asked quietly as we gathered our materials. The pattern's implications are spreading. I thought about Victor's dismissals, about Patricia's social hierarchies, about all the experienced voices still fighting to be heard in finance. Always ready. Let's show them again why expertise has no expiration date. The Washington sunset painted the Capitol dome in shades of possibility as we headed for our next strategic session. Today's testimony had laid groundwork for regulatory evolution, but our real work continued in market moves and coordinated responses across multiple continents. Victor had tried to push me aside, claiming I was too old to understand modern finance. Instead, he'd inspired changes that were reshaping global pension management. Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't argument or anger. It's transforming the very system that enabled it. The morning sun cast long shadows through the World Bank's conference room windows as I made final adjustments to my presentation materials. Representatives from 20 global financial institutions sat around the massive oak table, their attention fixed on the complex data patterns flowing across multiple screens. In the year since Victor had first dismissed my concerns about pension fund management, global finance had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. These risk exposure levels in traditional funds, the World Bank's senior advisor leaned forward, gesturing to our latest analysis. They're significantly worse than initially suspected. How quickly can your network implement protective measures? Emma's voice came through my earpiece, urgent but controlled. Singapore markets confirming new pattern development, AI system adjusting network responses, but the implications for non-integrated funds. I studied the real-time data, watching as our predictions about systemic risk became reality. Implementation isn't the primary challenge. The real issue is overcoming institutional resistance to necessary change. The French central bank representative shifted forward, her silver hair catching the morning light. Yet your results are undeniable. Traditional management approaches simply cannot match this level of risk control. My tablet lit up with an alert from Marcus. Our AI system had detected correlation patterns that suggested the vulnerabilities were spreading faster than expected. Conventional funds, still relying on outdated methods, were essentially flying blind into gathering storms. Mrs. Morrison, the IMF's chief economist, interrupted my analysis, his German accent thick with concern. Your network's expansion has been remarkable, but some institutions express concern about concentrating so much influence in a single innovative approach. Before I could respond, Sarah's message flashed across my screen. 3 more major European funds requesting emergency integration. Pattern affecting Asian markets exactly as projected. I gestured to the live market feeds. With respect, the concentration of influence already exists, just among those using increasingly dangerous traditional methods. We're offering evolution, not consolidation. Dorothy arrived quietly, settling into the chair beside me with the gravitas of decades in finance. Her presence reminded everyone that our success came from combining experienced oversight with technological innovation. Perhaps, the German representative suggested, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, a more gradual transition would be more appropriate. Allow institutions time to adapt their existing relationships and structures. Time is exactly what we don't have. I pulled up Emma's latest pattern analysis. These systemic risks are developing now. Traditional funds are exposed now. The only question is whether we're willing to evolve quickly enough to prevent unnecessary losses. My phone vibrated. Elena calling from London with urgent updates. The pattern we'd identified was creating ripple effects across European markets. Our network's coordinated responses were protecting member funds, but conventional institutions remained dangerously vulnerable. The Washington sunset painted the Capitol dome in shades of victory as we gathered our materials. My phone lit up with one final message from Emma. New patterns emerging in global markets that would prove again why expertise had no expiration date. Victor had tried to push me aside, claiming I was too old to understand modern finance. Instead, he'd inspired changes that were protecting millions of retirements worldwide. Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't argument or anger. It's proving that the very qualities they dismissed are exactly what the world needs most. Standing in that moment of triumph, I knew this wasn't really an ending. It was an evolution, a transformation in how the financial world valued expertise and innovation. Up next, you've got 2 more remarkable stories waiting for you right here. These powerful tales of resilience and triumph will show you exactly what happens when determination meets opportunity. Don't miss them. Click to discover how others turned challenge into success.